The question I often ask myself, and it's a question that I always pass off to my clients to think about and reflect on. Who is in control? Are you in control from an integrated place? Or are you being steered and directed by the shadows within you? And it's a very difficult question to come to terms with, especially if we have been in a state of pain and suffering and identity loss for some time. It can be a really uncomfortable conversation to have. And it can bring up a lot of emotion, a lot of memory that perhaps maybe we're not ready to contend with. Sometimes you need to release some of that tension just through time itself. Sometimes healing just requires time until you can really get into the more deeper work. So if any of you are at the point now where you're starting to feel ready that you want to dig a little bit deeper, there's a few things we want to do. Firstly, if you want to get to the point in your life where you can build a deeper relationship with a calling from within, some voice, some energy that you feel is directing you to some deeper purpose. That purpose can be, of course, exciting and fun and fulfilling. But at the same time, it can also be a calling of initiation. A calling that says the pain you're experiencing in your life is going to be the way for you to figure out what your higher calling is. It's through the pain itself. And it's understanding and interpreting the pain and embracing it and accepting it as much as possible in all its nuances. But before we can get to that deeper calling, that voice, that energy, this almost divine spirit, we have to first actually unravel all the things in the baggage, we'll say, just so we can make the terminology easy to understand, all the weight that's been stacked on top of one another over the years of us just existing. And so for terminology, the first thing you have are suppressions, right? Suppressions are simply just thoughts and ideas and emotions, feelings, all these things that come up that we actively, consciously try to push away. And we try to stuff into the back pocket, into the shadow realm, which all the rejected, disowned, denied parts of ourselves lived. In other words, the unlived life is there. Repression is a deeper level of that, which is essentially now anything that you are no longer consciously aware that you're pushing down, but still manifests itself through leakage or explosions. Leakages are essentially, somebody who, let's say, is not aware that they're passive aggressive or slightly mischievous, or they lie and they leak it out every once in a while. And when you try to bring it up to them, they really have no idea what you're talking about. You're misunderstanding what they're doing. It's a heavily repressed memory, story, pain that is influencing their actions without them really knowing about it. And explosions are essentially bottling, and then all of a sudden one day they erupt, they go crazy, or they vanish and they leave their workplace. All of a sudden you have no idea what's going on, what just happened. That was totally out of left field. And so again, repression is you are no longer consciously aware that you're pushing it down. It can also even exhibit itself through physical pain and ailments that you don't understand what's going on. Maybe you've had some things checked and you're like, I don't know why I'm feeling this pain in my gut. It just won't go away. There's a really wonderful book, The Body Keeps a Score, which elaborates on that topic, how unresolved trauma, unresolved pain can still manifest itself physically, even if you forget about it, even if you don't think anything happened to you, you can't recall, it still exhibits itself in your body. Now, if we go to the next layer, you have complexes. Complexes are emotional knots that sit below your conscious awareness that are created through pain in your life, a traumatic event. It could be one event, it could be multiple events that over time compound themselves. And the complexes can be pretty much anything. You can have father complexes. Maybe you didn't have a father in your life, or maybe you did, but you didn't have a good relationship with him. And that sort of manifested itself into a particular mold in you and how you perceive fatherhood and how you perceive yourself in the world. You can have an Oedipal complex, a martyr complex, someone who feels they must sacrifice themselves to society for the greater good, but at the expense of their own well-being, at the expense of their own sovereignty. They feel they need to just put themselves completely in harm's way for others. Complexes are, and you can have multiple complexes. You're not confined to just one. Now, where things get a little bit tricky is archetypes. Archetypes are essentially energetic forces that live in the collective unconscious. So if you imagine and it's different for every culture, every society. In the West, if we were to encapsulate what a hero figure is, we would all kind of come up to the same idea. Of course, you're going to have variations and differences. But we all will eventually form ourselves into similar behavioral traits, similar body types, actions, behaviors that elicit that if we look at and we say, yes, that is a hero figure. Now, this archetypal power is something so ancient that we can't even recognize it. We can't even know we're participating in it. That's how deep it is. That's how powerful this force is. And it's one thing to understand with this force, it's a borrowed force. So if ever you have this strong sense, something from the bottom up comes in, and you feel this deep embodiment that you are the hero of this story in this one moment, or you must sacrifice yourself for some event or some scenario right here, right now, and you feel this immense force calling you. And it's not just you see it across the board with other people as well. They're reflecting that back at you. And that's when you can get this archetypally possessed state. Now, all these things are functioning and they're operating whether you know they are or aren't. Now, if you can imagine, if you don't know what's going on from within, if you haven't investigated it and built some awareness, what's going to end up happening? Well, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have forces controlling you, dictating what you do, what you say, what you think, without you even knowing, and you're going to pop in and out of those states. So sometimes, if you imagine yourself privately in your house, you'll have a particular frame. So you have a particular state that you are. Then I bring in 5 different types of people. Maybe these are 5 people that hit a particular nerve for you. They represent something you're not really able to contend with from within. And if I bring them in the room, that's going to distort your frame. That's going to shape you and bend you and make you maybe speak differently. And those are the complexes from within trying to protect, trying to navigate the terrain. And if I just keep adding different types of people, you'll see you'll slowly start to bend in and out. Sometimes you'll go back into your original frame. Sometimes you'll go into a different frame. But it's really difficult for you to recognize. Perhaps you'll have some peripheral sense of what it is, but it's very hard to really, really see it unless you've actually done work for it. So the first thing you want to do if you want to start building some self-awareness, because when you build self-awareness, you can be observant of yourself without judgment. So I always say curiosity, adventure, love, compassion, and a firm hand when it comes to self-observation and reflection. This way it doesn't become more painful than it has to be. Anytime you criticize or judge internally, it's just going to cause things to choke up and tighten, and you won't actually be able to go deeper with it, and you'll always stay at the surface level. And so first thing is building awareness of your actions, your intentions, your thoughts. Always regularly ask yourself, what am I up to? What was I up to in that conversation today with that girl? Or what was I up to in that conversation with these group of people that I just met 5 minutes ago? What was I up to? What was I trying to convey? Because oftentimes we're trying to convey something. Maybe we're trying to protect a particular image. Maybe we're trying to convey a different image. Something we'd rather be than what we are right now. And so it's first understanding and seeing it. You might have to journal. You might have to write these down. You can do it through art. I use journaling a lot, but you can really do it any way you like. Any sacred form of taking what's going on and mapping it out in front of you to see and observe and appreciate as well. You're going to gain some deeper appreciation for yourself. Now, once you start building awareness of them, then you want to start seeing how they connect to one another. Because at first you're going to compartmentalize. You're going to see, okay, this is how I tend to act when I'm around these types of groups of people. This is how I tend to think at nighttime. I find myself always ruminating on this feeling and this memory. Everything is sort of separate at first, and it feels kind of chaotic and random. But then once you start mapping things out, eventually you're going to want to start to see how they relate to one another. And then once you can start to see how they relate to one another, that's going to really deepen the understanding of how you operate and how things work from within. As much as possible, it's very difficult to know how you fully operate. That's a lifelong process. It's a journey that's going to take you pretty much your entire lifetime. Even then, you might not even fully understand. But it does make a massive difference just by doing that particular action. Now, let me just quickly, I have one more thing I wanted to mention. Yeah, so I always usually have my notes over here just in case I slip, because I don't edit any of my videos, so because I want to be as authentic as possible, and sometimes when I go into a train of thought, I usually forget. Now, once you start to piece some of these things together, you're going to get to the third stage. The third stage is you're going to see parts of yourself that are traits that you admire and you love about yourself and you appreciate. But you're also going to start to notice traits that you may feel shameful of. Memories you may feel shameful of, regretful, angry, bitter, jealous, lustful. Aspects that were once dumped into the shadow but now brought up into your awareness. When you get to that state, one thing you want to practice, and it's a very difficult practice, but it'll make wondrous changes in just sort of unraveling yourself from within and getting more deeper and connected to that spirit, that soul that's going to call at you for a deeper purpose. You have to sit within that paradox. Within the paradox that says you are both good. You have the potential for good, the potential for real lasting change in your life, in your family's life, in people's lives. But you also simultaneously have the capability of evil, of bad, destruction, envy, manipulation. You have both those potentials and you have both those traits, some in higher degrees than others. And you want to sit in the center of that and find comfort in that paradox. And it's finding comfort in that paradox that it's going to illuminate some deeper sense of wisdom, some deeper sense of self-understanding. Because oftentimes we ping, right? So we'll go to one side, we are heavily obsessed that we want to just be good, good, good. And then we push away, suppress, repress anything that we consider bad. But this is an entity, it's a force of its own from within. It's a little personality you have that's crying for attention, crying for some form of acceptance and understanding. And so if you stay in that center, you can gain some awareness of it. And there's one thing to know, which shadows the parts of you, the unlived life, the darker fantasies that you have. It's very important that you stay in proximity to it, but you do not embody it, or neither you do not completely reject and look away from it. Final thing to leave you with is look at it like the sun in our solar system. When you're in the Goldilocks zone, it's going to produce life. It produces life, greenery. But you get too close, then what happens? It burns everything. It just turns to a fiery rock. And what happens if you go too far away? Well, you freeze. And so that's the one way you can interpret the shadow that really did a lot for me to understand it, is it's close proximity, that you keep a vigilant eye on it and you can understand. If you get just in that right Goldilocks zone, you can harness its power and channel it. You can channel lust for creativity. You can channel anger for focus and consistency and commitment. But embodying will consume you and inflate your ego or leave you down a spiral of downward destruction. And too far away, you are now living this sort of numb, cold experience where you're unable to feel. So I'll leave you with that for today. If you want to go deeper with this topic with shadow work, identity loss, living an ego soul integrated lifestyle. If you go ahead and click that button below, it'll send you on my page. You can sign up to my newsletter. And on my newsletter, I'm also going to send you my 3-step identity rebuilding guide. It's a toolkit that you can use to help you navigate through identity loss and give you some good introductions into shadow work and just give you the concepts of what's going on before we go deeper in the coming newsletters. It would be my absolute privilege. It's something that I've always wished I had, and I'm just so excited to offer this to you. Thank you very much, and I will see you on the next video.